So in this video, this is effectively going to be a part 2 to my Skyrim containers video, so if you haven't seen that yet, do check that out. However, in this part, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover the alternate script approach to fixing chests that have scripts attached to them. Now, there is a caveat to mention before we get started with this, that the scripted approach, while it works, it has one major drawback, which I will address when we get to it. There might be a way around that. I don't currently yet know what it is, so I'm not going to be able to put it in this video. But since doing this video, if I do find out the solution, or if it changes so that it's now doable, then I might come back to this video and redo it with the new information. But right now, as it stands, I think that there's this issue that exists at the moment that needs to be somewhat addressed. But we'll get to that when we get to it. But for now, let's cover how to make chests work as both a scripted object, but then also as a container. So what we have here from the previous videos, we have our visible container and we have our invisible Skyrim container system. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the container system and I'm just going to remove it because we're not going to use that in this video. And I'm going to select the visible container, the actual chest, and I'm going to create a custom property on this, which is going to be a Boolean. So I'm going to add property and I'm just going to say, I'm going to call this first opened. So this is going to check whether this is the first time we're opening this chest or not. And it's going to be false because at the beginning of the game we shouldn't have opened it at all. So first opened should be false. We're going to leave the item container off, so it's not a container. And let's now go back to how we had things set up in the previous video. We had this script on our chest, which was setting it to open. Then it had the message box, and then it had the open container calling the previous container, which we're going to remove now because we're not opening that invisible container anymore. If you've watched the previous video, then you'll know what the issue is with scripts attached to containers. But if you haven't watched that video, then let me just quickly reiterate what the problem is. If you have a script on a container, then it will stop opening the container after the script, depending on what the script does. If you just had a play animation, then it would open, then it would still, funnily enough, call the container. But the moment you start putting a message in at the very least, possibly even effects or spawning enemies or something like that, then it stops acting like a container and doesn't show the contents at the end of that. It could just be a byproduct of display message, or it could be other things. I haven't thoroughly tested it. But at the very least, display message stops the container acting like a container. The other problem is if we try and put an open container at the end of this that calls to itself, it just goes into a sort of loop and gets stuck, so we can't do that either. So we have to be a bit smarter with how we're going to approach this. So to fix the alternate way, using script, you start with the container off, so it's not a container, and we have this global property first opened, which is currently set to false. So in our script, what we're going to do is we're going to disconnect the display message, just move that over there for now, and we're going to add in an evaluate condition node after the play animation, because this can always happen, because we always want the chest to open no matter what, so it doesn't need to be within the evaluate condition. This can happen straight away, no matter whether it's been opened before or not. This will happen first. But then what we want it to do is we want it to evaluate the self property that we added, the entity property. So in this case, we're going to choose self property because this script is going to be on the chest, so it's going to already apply to itself. So self property in this case does not equal Boolean, so it does not equal true. And we're going to name the property name first opened, the name that we put in the custom properties of the entity. So what we're effectively saying there is when we first use this chest, if the property first opened is not true, which it will be the first time, then we want it to do all of this. We want it to display our message, and we'll just leave the message as it is. But then what we want to do after that is we want it to enable container. So we want it to turn that setting that's currently off in the properties of the container, we want this to turn on. So we'll hook that up, and we need to give it the ID. So in this case, treasure chest, because that's the entity ID of the chest. Just to show that, in case this is the first video of this you're watching, I've just set that there. Then we need to add items to container, because obviously because the container was off, we need to obviously tell the container what's in it. So I'm just going to put one thing in it for now, but obviously you could add more by just having multiple. In fact, I'll do a couple. So we're going to point this to self. I think that would work. Container entity should work. So I'll try that. Self, and then let's put one apple into the container, and then we'll just duplicate this. And in fact, we're going to have to put it afterwards, aren't we? I thought maybe we could do multiple at the same time, but obviously can't. So we'll wire that up as well, and we'll put the bread in there as well. And then the last thing we're going, two more things we're going to do, sorry. We're then going to assign a value. So this is where we're then going to set self.property, square brackets, double quotes inside the square brackets. You're going to type the name of that property that we made, so first opened, and then click here, set this to Boolean, true, okay. So what we're doing there is we're saying set that property first opened to true now, because now we've done all of this, it's now been opened and done its thing. So now the last thing we can do is we can do open container, connect that up, and we can set this to probably even self. Okay. So the reason why this isn't going to be a loop like it was in the previous video is because what will happen now is open container will call itself, so it will loop around, but this time it will play the animation, which is fine, you won't notice that, but then it will hit this node here. But the second time round, this if statement is going to effectively not go down this path, because this is checking, is it not true? And if it's not true, do all of this. But at the very end, we're saying set it to true. So when it loops back round, it's not going to do all of this, it's just going to end out basically, because I'm not going to connect anything to the else, I'm just going to drop it out. So at that point it will get to here, and then it will just act like a container, because the container will be on, it will have items on it, and we've also told it to effectively open itself. So it's not going to loop through everything on this side. So if you wanted the container to do other things like, show an effect or spawn a monster or whatever, you would put all of those things down this particular path before you get to enable container, add item, set the setting, and then open itself. So you'd put all of the things you want to have happen before this node here. So if I wanted something after the display message, I could add it there, for example. So I could add a character, for example. I could put that in between. I'm not going to do that, but you get the idea. So there's one caveat though, and I mentioned that at the beginning. I don't know the solution right now. If I learn it, or if it becomes possible later down the line, I will address this. But the problem is I don't know how to assign the other script. Let's just go to it, the chest close script, this one that closes the chest. I don't know how to assign that to the on close of, I don't know how to, basically let me show you, I don't know how to assign that currently to here in script, because this is going to be off in the map editor, and unfortunately it doesn't save the settings. So for example, if I put an apple in there and assign the script, but then turn this off, so let's say I want it off to begin with, if I now go back to the chest, turn it on again, it's all blanked out again. It's removed the items, it's removed the script. So if you want this off to begin with, I don't currently know a way of assigning the script after the fact. So for example, one thing you would think you could do is you could go to the open script, and you would go to the very end where we're assigning this value, and let's just move disconnect that for a moment. And let's say what we also want to do is we want to set entity script to self. We want to assign this entity script to the self, and we want it to be chest close. But the problem is we don't want it to go on the interacts of the entity. We want it to go on the on close of the inventory of the container. But unfortunately, this entity script only supports tile-based parameters for the trigger when, and none of those apply because this is not on a tile. It's not only is it on an object, but it's on a very specific action of the object. We want this to go on the on close of the container within the chest. We can't do that. We apparently, unless this is as I say, unless there's hidden parameters that are not actually on the node itself. There could be, that would require further exploration, or if this is going to be further added to down the line so that we can have more options here that will allow us to do that later down the line, I don't know. But without being able to do that, unfortunately, there's no way currently that I am aware of now putting the chest close script on a container that wasn't previously set up. So unfortunately, we're just going to have to kind of leave it as it is, but let's just at least show the end result. So what we've been able to achieve in this video is we've got a container which starts off but has a parameter of first opened being false, and then the script basically says when you use it, open the chest. If it's not already been opened, go down this path of showing a message, then enable it, then add the items to it, then set it so you have now opened it, and then open it again so it loops back round. But this time, when it gets that if statement, it's not going to apply to this path anymore, so it will spit us out of the script and show the container. Fingers crossed. So let's save everything and give it a quick play test. So here we are in the game, so let's use the chest. It opens, we get our text, and if we click off, there's our container containing the apple and the bread that we put inside. And if I close the container, of course the chest stays open because there's no script attached to close it. But obviously if I click on it now, because the if statement is now not valid anymore because the parameter is now true, it's not doing the display message, it's not re-enabling the container, it's just showing us the contents every time we click it. So that's how to do it with script. It's not perfect though because of the issues we've got with the on close not being able to reattach the chest close script. But at the very least, you can see that there's another way of doing it with script. And if somebody who's watching this knows how to do the chest close stuff, that would be really handy to know. But that will do it for this video. Hopefully it was helpful and useful. Any questions, as always, hit me up on the Discord. But that will wrap up this video. Thanks for watching.